Hi, my name is Kayla, and this is my CCR on the film The Park After Dark. To start off with, the project was involved in creating a horror film in a park to represent a kidnapping. The goal was to use horror conventions to build suspense and engage a teenage audience. Throughout the project, I planned, I filmed, I edited the movie while developing media production skills. The first question is, how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? My horror film used common ones for the genre conventions. Um, for example, it was dark lighting, isolated area, suspenseful music, and sound effects, slow camera movements, and other editing skills. And this was all to create and build suspense throughout the story and to engage the audience into what is happening and to keep their attention. So yeah. Although my film did use common conventions, there still were challenges while using these conventions. Um, for example, the setting, it was a park which was dark, isolated. Um, Using that is good, but it's also really common to the point where you really have to grab the audience's attention to kind of impress them and to build that suspense. We also use natural acting to use or create realism, which was a little hard to do, especially with having teenage actors. And we're all very inexperienced. Another thing was we used psychological fear rather than jump scares, which with psychological, you have to have the audience's attention for them to understand and get that feeling of suspense, rather than a jump scare is kind of you're kind of just watching and then you get scared right away. But yeah. Moving on to representation of social groups. The main social group in my film was represented by teenagers. This makes the film more relatable for a teenage audience. Teenagers are shown in a normal everyday situation that becomes dangerous, which creates fear and realism within the film. And we kind of went over this already, but the appeal to the target audience is teenagers. So that goes back to the representation, having an audience of teenagers while having teenage actors creates a connection between the two, which can help build suspense and fear within the story. It focuses on kidnapping, which creates tension and fear. The park setting is also relatable to young audiences who often spend their time in similar locations. And yeah. The next question is, how does your product engage with audiences, and how would it be distributed as a real media text? So for this, our audience engagement, the film engages audiences through suspenseful openings, mystery around the kidnapping, fast-paced editing, cliffhanger music, and suspenseful sound effects, which all help to build and create that fear within the horror movie. And having the kidnapping, we clearly know who the kidnapper is, you could see their face, but it builds suspense through not knowing where he's at. And
Go.
that clip, he's clearly seen, so you already kind of know who the kidnapper is. But the suspenseful part is that you're worried for the other teenage girls that are currently there looking for their missing friend. As a distribution through my film, I think my film would be distributed as a real media text through either YouTube, social media platforms, showcases, or online streaming platforms. It's more of a short film rather than a movie. So to go on Netflix and all those big things, I don't think it's the best fit for that. But I think for short span type of platforms, I think it would be great for. Another question is, how did your production skills develop through this project? Another question is, how did your production skills develop through this project? Going into this project, I already had editing skills from a previous class, but for this film, we needed to know shots, movements, angles, sound, and all that different type of techniques used to create a film, and I didn't really know anything about them, especially what they were called or what they look like. So going into that in the beginning of the year, learning about that really helped towards the end. And that all went into the planning and organizing, because making the film and organizing it, for example, like the script, you had to know like your shots. So knowing that really did help. And when I was creating my script, I developed and learned them way more than I did before, because I did have to do more research into them. And also like adding them into my film really helped like set them in. Now going into the skills more descriptively, for filming, I learned how to use camera angles more effectively, how to film in different lighting conditions, especially with dark. It was much harder than in light, because you do have to have the right angle and the right lighting to make the shot look good. And how to create suspense visually, and how to direct actors, which all played a huge role in filming this whole process. And just how to like move the camera, like which camera to use, especially for quality. Yeah. Next is editing skills. As I said, I already kind of knew how to edit, but doing this, I got way more practice on how to cut clips, how to add sound effects and like where to get them from, how to create suspense using pasting, and how to use transitions more, and how to use like certain timing and sound, like, and all those effects into the film to create that suspense and fear throughout the film. Moving on to the last question, how did Integrity Technology, software, hardwares, and online in this project? Some technology used was my iPhone 15 camera used for filming, editing softwares like CapCut and WeVideos. I used Google Docs for planning. I used online sound effects, which came from either WeVideo or CapCut, and I used Google Slides for presentation and to help me plan. In conclusion, overall this project helped me understand horror conventions, audience engagement, and media production skills. I developed technology skills and created a horror film that appeals to teenage audience. Thank you for watching.